Hello, my name is Zahar Karetsky, and this is the Transitions Visions podcast, a podcast series about and for the sustainability transitions community. Future Energy Leader, this is what it says in the LinkedIn bio of my transitions colleague in Eindhoven University of Technology, Ivo Wakounig. Ivo is the guest of today's episode, in which we discuss his volunteering experience in the World Energy Council, which he manages to combine with his PhD. So I asked him about the WEC, what this volunteering experience brings him, and how a transitions PhD can help transform organizations such as this. Please enjoy, and I invite you, as always, to send me your comments, questions, and possibly topics for future episodes. You can reach me on Twitter, and you can find the link in the podcast profile page, but also on LinkedIn and Blue Sky. So very happy to have you here, Ivo. Ivo is a PhD candidate in the Technology, Innovation and Society group at the University of Eindhoven. And the reason why I invited him is that he does a lot of volunteering and sort of activism work in the World Energy Council and holding the title of Future Energy Leader. This really caught my eye, and so we kind of got together. Hi, Ivo.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be on your podcast series.
It's a pleasure to have you. So maybe just to start it off, what is a future energy leader actually?
You're starting with the difficult questions already. So what is a future energy leader? In my definition,
yes.
So in my definition is somebody who contributes to energy transitions. They can be global, they can rather be local, somebody who is really interested in doing work in that. Obviously, if I just take this definition, everybody is a future energy leader who works in the energy field, but maybe I can make it more specific. Term leadership in itself is obviously something that you hear everywhere these days. Suddenly everybody's a leader. But maybe what makes them stand out is that they push for a lot of work also in the free time. They also try to expand their knowledge. They don't just try to limit themselves to a particular sector, technology, or whatever, but they really try to expand their knowledge, but also the transition angle to it. That's one thing that makes it stand out. The other thing is obviously, at least from what I see, is also with the network, with the people with whom I interact with, is that I feel that everybody has this sort of intrinsic energy to contribute a lot, like a lot, which goes beyond, at least from my understanding, beyond, let's say, the ordinary. Mm-hmm. At least it's my experience so far. Just in short, obviously I can elaborate on this way more, but...
maybe to specify, because you're a future energy leader within the World Energy Council.
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe you can say a few words about what is
so
that?
Yes, just to short, the World Energy Council has been founded 100 years ago. So we're actually in the 100th anniversary this time, and 40 years ago, the World Energy Council created a program which is called Future Energy Leaders. So what they try to do is to implement the voices of, let's say, younger people. I wouldn't say that everybody qualifies as youth. It depends also on the definition of youth. I think, but whatever, just to also put in young people in the discussions, especially when it comes to energy transitions, because I think we can both agree that the energy transition is an intergenerational sort of challenge, and they create the Future Energy Leaders program. And what does this program try to do? So every year there are like around 33 people who are getting selected. So in general there are 100 global Future Energy Leaders. Mm-hmm. So each year 33 are getting selected for 3 years. So a third is going to be exchanged every year. The tenure is 3 years. So at the end of the day, you have a continuity of around 100 global future energy leaders.
And they are not only academics. They are
exactly.
Anybody.
It's just anybody. You have such a diversity. You have people from academia. In my case, for example, you have people from private sector. You have people from government. You also have a lot of startup representatives. So you have a quite diverse, quite diverse participation in the Future Energy Leaders program from the sectoral lens, but also from the geographical lens. So you have people from all over the world, and that's also somehow the value, because just 4 or 5 weeks ago, it's actually quite a lot already, there was the World Energy Congress here in Rotterdam. I mean, here, just the difference in the Netherlands, but here in Rotterdam. And it's just interesting to see that what kind of diversity you have. You know, you suddenly talk to some renewable energies engineer from Africa, an oil and gas person from Asia, and some startup person from South America, whatever. You know, you just have such a big diversity within this network, now in particular the Future Energy Leaders network, but also the global network. It's just sometimes very difficult to comprehend in a positive way. You know, it's just amazing to see what kind of diversity you have, and everybody's trying to push for the energy transition in their particular context, in their particular way. And obviously they want to expand it globally, in what capacity whatsoever. Maybe also another comment here is, I talked about the Global Future Energy Leaders program. What we also have is, and now I'm coming back to the World Energy Council. The World Energy Council has national member committees.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, in around 90 countries, if I'm not wrong. And for example, in the Netherlands, there's one in the US, there's one in Chile, there's one in China. There's also, like, in general, in every single continent, you have basically these member committees, and a lot of them have the national Future Energy Leaders program.
Makes sense.
So the same thing that you have internationally, in the national context, which is also very fruitful.
So immediately, a question comes to mind. If it's all about energy, do the oil companies have a role to play in the World Energy Council?
Obviously, I mean, the World Energy Council is, let's say, it doesn't advocate for any certain technology. It doesn't advocate for a certain stakeholder group. But what it does advocate for is for energy transitions in general, plus also humanizing energy. That's another topic which is quite big or quite important right now. Humanizing energy is trying to put a human perspective onto energy transitions, because that's something that we forget quite often.
Yeah, and what do you mean?
With humanizing energy? Yeah, for me it's just moving away from this sort of technocratic view of energy, just trying to always think in terms of technologies, in terms of these sort of technological artifacts, but also trying to understand what this actually means. What does it mean in our daily lives? Where is the human perspective? What does this, maybe also cultural identity to energy technologies? What is societal needs? At the end of the day, people don't essentially want to have a solar PV, they don't want to have a wind turbine. Now, extreme case, they don't want to have oil and gas or whatever, they want to have services. They want to have a light, they want to have mobility and these kind of things. Just trying to also bring in these perspectives into energy debates, because now it's also very much energy supply-led. When you talk about energy transitions, everybody's talking about expanding renewables, which is wonderful and great, but this is just a certain part of the picture. So it's just trying to expand the discussion, expand the conversation, and just putting a human touch to it.
How much discussion is there at the meetings that happen every year?
So
and what kind of discussion?
Yeah. So again, it's like an impartial forum, but we do give space to these discussions. I will just try to give some examples. Now what we had is the World Energy Congress, the 26th World Energy Congress in Rotterdam, and they had very, very different panels. There were like somewhere on AI, somewhere on the human side of energy transition, somewhere how to include citizens. Other were talking about the role of nuclear energy. So you just have sometimes you have a very techno or tech panels, and sometimes you have these sort of human-centric panels. So at the end of the day, everything is getting discussed and what role they can play in energy transitions.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. How much, from your perspective, are these meetings sort of guided by the industry, by the narratives constructed by the industry?
I think it would be wrong to say that there wouldn't be any narrative that's not influencing that. I think that's quite normal that any narrative is influencing any discussion. So I do think they have the role to play, but obviously it's just trying to find a common ground between these different narratives.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. So let's switch to what you do at the World Energy Council. Maybe you can share a particular success story of yours, of your engagement with in this organization.
That's a good one. So I started with engaging with the World Energy Council actually 4 years ago, a little bit longer. Back then I was working for the Austrian member committee. And 1 week in, there was the COVID pandemic, then home office and all of that. So the perfect start. No, but since then, then I was working initially at the Austrian member committee, and then I went to the Netherlands. I was still supporting them, but then I also supported the global network. Now I'm also supporting the national network in the Netherlands. So just have different engagements in the past years. What I'm proud of in Austria, for example, is that I supported revamping to some extent the National Future Energy Leaders Program in Austria. In Austria, we call it Young Energy Professionals, but at the end of the day, it's very similar. We had around 60 to 70 participants, or still have them. And through that, we support sort of youth engagement there. So that's something I'm proud of on this sort of national scale in Austria. In the Netherlands, I'm very much engaged in their Future Energy Leaders Network. There's also a national one. What I'm very proud of is what we have achieved, actually, because there was not such a network 1 year ago, and we managed to just build a massive network in the Netherlands within a very short period of time. We just around a dozen very active members of the Dutch Future Energy Leaders Program, and after 1 year, I think we had quite a success story. Our LinkedIn followers keep increasing by 25% each month. So if you take that into account, almost every 3 to 4 months we're doubling. Plus, we already had very successful events as well, with the City of Rotterdam, with Erasmus University, and also with the ministry. And one example is a program which some of my colleagues led, was the Innovation Hub. What happened there is they just went out and they just had a call for applications for the Innovation Hub, and then we had a lot of different groups spread across the world, and they were working on an innovation topic. So we had two from Asia, I think 2 from Africa. There was also one from Latin America. So you just spread around the world, and they were developing solutions. So that was quite interesting. And that's also something I'm really proud of for my colleagues.
I do want to come back to your experience. What does that bring you? What volunteering there brings you professionally, personally?
So in general, I think I'm somebody that just from my own personal lens, I'm somebody who likes to volunteer. Sounds a little bit odd, but right after I finished my school, I always volunteered somewhere. Initially, it was after my civil service, it was like, for example, I was supporting people in a refugee camp, but then I also supported the ambulance in Austria. And then afterwards, after this phased out, I actually supported the Fridays for Future network, Fridays for Future in Austria. And then I somehow merged into this Future Energy Leaders Program, because for me, I always want to do something next to my engagement where I earn my money, so something like that. And in the best case is if that's also connected somehow, and if that also brings me further. So what does volunteering bring me? To me, it's experiences. I think I do learn a lot in the jobs, but I think I learn to a similar extent also a lot of skills through volunteering. You learn a lot of soft skills. You learn about how to just engage with people, how to advocate for your stuff, to just also try to find or just to resolve conflicts, to just realize some visions that you have. And I think these are a lot of valuable lessons that I have really the privilege to be able to do that, because other people don't have the privilege to have to work maybe an extra job in order to earn stuff. So I'm privileged enough to be able to volunteer. But to me, on the one hand, I learn a lot of skills. On the other hand is I still see myself as young, and I think I'm young, and what these sort of engagements give me, I have the freedom to also make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
or try to do stuff, and I just can also sort of learn a lot more about me, about my character, about what to do. So for me, it's just a learning experience, getting to know different people, getting to know different parts of a sector. Yeah.
And for transitions PhDs, what would you recommend if people would like to also to volunteer? What kind of things they should look for? What would be your advice?
I think let's put it like this. These sort of activities or conversations with different people, the things that they give me is some sense of grounding, some sense of reality, and what I managed to do, because in my PhD I'm also working on transitions. If you always read through the theories, you get a lot of understanding of transition processes, but you also need to be able to connect it with reality, and also take a step back and see if some of the theoretical expectations that you may have, can you observe them in reality? Is it realistic to some extent? Maybe some theories are quite idealized, and that's totally fine. It's also sometimes how theories work. But sort of interacting, dealing with people, they serve as a reality check. It's very often, and not in a negative way, it's in a positive way, because sometimes you just see that a lot of change is actually happening way faster than you anticipated. And then sometimes you just see different sort of barriers which you may not have believed in or understood before you would have seen those. It's, yeah.
Right. Yeah, so get more kind of on the ground experience.
On the ground experience, I think that's a good word. Good word.
Yeah. Coming back to your PhD, you said it's connected, this volunteering in WEC, it's connected to your PhD because it's transitions. Can you say a bit more how it connects?
For me, the connection is obviously rather indirect and not so strong, but I still like to draw connections. So my PhD is about trying to understand how policy can support the transition in the North Sea. Because as you may have seen, now they have these big ambitions in the North Sea. You still have a lot of fossil fuels in the North Sea. Now they want to put offshore wind. They want to have around 300 gigawatts by 2050. They also want to have big hydrogen, maybe, potentially, a lot of infrastructure and so on. So there's a lot of transition is essentially happening, or about to happen. I would rather say it's currently unfolding. One could say you're always in a transition, but yeah, it's a different discussion. And how can I link it to what I learned through the World Energy Council? I think I learned a lot about this sort of societal embeddedness of transitions, to just understand that a transition is actually nothing that's special in a way. Because to me, it's also being younger, the younger version of myself. I always thought the energy transition that we have right now is something special. And yes, there are some characteristics which make it special, but then also looking back, and also the skills or the knowledge, which I've also built through being at the World Energy Council, is that the energy sector has always been in a transition mode. We've always been changing through that, and it's still ongoing. And just the energy landscape is constantly changing, and this is also something to also sometimes ground yourself in your research, and this also makes you understand that you can also learn a lot from past transitions. And now, for example, in particular in the Dutch context, I actually started my research. The first thing I actually read papers about the history of the energy transitions in the Netherlands. And through that, I actually learned so much, because for me, this is important to contextualize. If you think about the North Sea energy transition in the Dutch context, you actually also have to understand where they come from. I think I'm not so sure if I would have, started my research from the historical lens, trying to understand how it already unfolded in the Netherlands, would have not worked or been engaged with the council.
And you mentioned before the intergenerational component of your work in WEC, right? Or at least your interest in it. Can you say a bit more what it is and how it is interesting?
So I think the climate crisis is obviously the big topic, which stands out here, and this is also one of the primary leading goals or the sort of normative goal to fight the climate crisis behind the current energy transition. And sort of having this as a starting point for intergenerational debates, I think that's very important. Because if you think about all these projections, 20, 30, 40, 80, 100 years, whatever in the future, is just horrible. It's obviously just horrible. And if you take the climate science seriously, which you should do, obviously, then it's just a very massive generational inequality which is happening. So at the end of the day, we, but also our previous generations, we're just dumping a lot of waste on the planet. Actually, I wouldn't call it waste, because waste is usually something you can maybe remove or clean up. I would rather call it poison. You put a lot of poison in the environment, or a lot of poison on the planet, which will lead to very detrimental effects in the future. And thinking about intergenerational sort of equality, maybe even, this also requires that people who have to live in the future should also be able to sort of be able to shape their future. Because what I see right now is you have a lot of old people, usually old white men, making decisions on behalf of the young people in futures in which they should live in 20 years, in 40 years, or whatever. So what's important for me is that the people who will be most affected by certain decisions, and now this is just from a generational lens, you can apply many different aspects to this, but this is just from a generational lens. People who are going to be most affected by certain decisions which are taken now should also be able to shape these decisions. Well, a big problem is obviously, it's obviously not possible to do that. I mean, I don't find a mechanism, but you should also be able to find a way to sort of implement the generations which have not been born yet into the decision we make now. I think that's a big topic which I found very interesting to explore. There was a report from the Club of Rome, a book actually from 2 years back. They also say intergenerational thinking, or 7 generations thinking, something like that. I think that's something we should actually do or strive to do. And I'm a great believer in that. So what I also don't want to do is, what I also see sometimes is also trying to sort of create this generational divide, saying, yeah, these stupid boomers, they just destroyed our planet, or these idiots from the Gen Z who just have no clue about it. I think that's not how it works. I think it just only works when everybody works together on this problem, being aware that the younger generations will have to bear the burden. This sort of intergenerational thinking, multi-generations thinking, I don't know how to exactly frame it, that's not a new thing. Yeah. Our ancestors, 10,000 years ago, they actually did it. They knew how to do it. But then, let's say, what we thought, or what a lot of people call progress, we just, destroyed a lot of these sort of ancestral knowledge that we have. I don't want to romanticize this, but there are also a lot of positive things which existed back then. And people thousands of years ago, maybe also at this present day, usually indigenous people, they know how to deal with intergenerational issues, with preserving their ecosystem. And that's something we actually need to recreate again. We know how to do it somehow, at least we knew it back then. Why did we suddenly ditch it? I mean, there are a lot of reasons behind it. Yeah. And you can also now go into religion, go into cultural debates, go into capitalism critique, and so on. I'm all for that. There are multiple reasons why it doesn't exist, but it's not like which is something impossible. That's something almost very intrinsic to humanity, that you think in multiple generations. Why are we not doing it now? I think it has a lot to do with greed. It has a lot to do with short-term thinking. It has a lot to do with just profit-making. It has a lot to do with just trying, or just living somewhat in your own bubble, also with individualism. There are a lot of reasons, in my view, why intergenerational thinking struggles to surface or resurface. And that's something we have to overcome, at least in my view.
Does the WEC take this on board? Do you manage to influence it with these ideas, with your vision?
To some extent, obviously. What I try to do is obviously, especially support the intergenerational bit from a practical lens. How can we support these sort of engagement with young people? How can we make sure that young people can also advocate for the solutions, take part in different events, panels, in working groups, in some other study work, etc., etc. So I'm just rather trying to support it from a practical lens. I don't see myself. I mean, I'm not the person who within the council tries to advocate for that. I've never thought of this actually. Maybe you're giving me ideas, but at least that's my perspective. I'm not saying that's the objective truth, but I think now in particular, what the good thing is about the council is that you can also try to think how you can do it in practical terms.
I have an example. Even in this university, there's this Chair of the Future initiative. Have you heard about it?
I've heard of it, but I have no clue what it is actually.
Yeah, so it's a symbolic position, like a chairperson, that represents the future generations, and that chair is sitting in the executive board. The students also built an actual chair.
Oh, I think I've seen it. Yeah.
It's made of different materials, recycled, but some mycelium. So it's really like all about nature and sustainability and recyclability. What do you think professionally, people who are alumni of WEC or just think about sustainability and the topics of transitions and energy transitions in their own sort of professions, what do you think they can do as graduates, recent graduates?
In terms of intergenerational, or supporting intergenerational conversations, or in general for energy transition?
In general, energy transition, just transitions.
In my view, understand that there's the human component. It's the only thing that we should. Obviously, we're changing tactical systems. We're just deploying megawatts or gigawatts of capacity. There's a frequency and this and that. But at the end of the day, it's about humans, about human beings, about what to do with it, with societies. I think that's what I believe is something that you should take with you when you are part of the council, part of the alumni network of the Future Energy Leaders program, or in general. I think also as a human being, just make sure that what we do with energy is we're not trying to build fancy systems and just trying to create these most advanced technologies. We have to solve societal problems. And that's something that has to be at the heart of your actions, in my view. I've just seen a lot of, and you see that also internationally with also national, whatever, you just see it a lot of in transition debates. It's a very technocratic thinking. And yes, you need technologies here and there, but you're solving societal problems. This energy transition is not to expand technologies, it's about solving societal problems.
With your PhD, with your other soft skills that you get from volunteering, what kind of career aspirations do you have after finishing the PhD?
I will not answer that question.
It's a secret.
No. It's not a secret. But if you. It's actually let's go half a year back and then let's say half a year back. If you would have asked me that question half a year back, I would say 4 years ago. I still, like 4.5 years ago, I still studied physics and astronomy in Vienna. And then if somebody would have told me that I'm sitting here with you right now recording a podcast while we're looking at the trees of Eindhoven University of Technology, I would have called you insane.
Why?
Because that's something I never imagined I would do. Actually, I saw myself as a theoretical cosmologist, sitting at the university, somewhere in a very dark room filled with books and so on. I love that. That's why I saw myself a few years back. Then, obviously, climate crisis and all of that sort of changed my mind, changed my mindset. And now I'm here after 4.5 years. And so if I say, where am I going to be in 3.5 years? I don't know. I just keep it open. For me, it's important I will extremely likely I'm going to be engaged in the energy sector. In what capacity? I don't know. That's why I'm not going to answer you that, because I don't know it myself.
Yeah, fair enough. It's a process.
Yeah, but obviously in energy transitions, so yeah.
Anything else you would like to shout out, or?
Anything else that I would shout out? I think what I just want to share is, and re-emphasize, I think I've said it many times, is just we should try to think, on the one hand, just get some sort of, be a little bit more humble also about energy transitions, trying to understand that maybe this energy transition is also not that special, apart from the fact that, okay, we have a deadline, somehow maybe there's also some sort of directionality, but transitions already happened in the past, so we can learn from them. That's one thing. Second thing is, the goal is not to engineer systems. The goal is to solve societal problems. I think that's another bit. And then maybe the third lesson is also a little bit, yeah, whatever. The third lesson maybe would be to just try to focus on the human side of things. That's the most important thing.
Nice. Thank you so much, Ivo.
Thank you so much, Zara.